Who would benefit more from a ring, Jimmy Butler or the Joker?
I think at the moment, it would be the Joker. He has 2 MVPs, right? And if you don't win the title, then they'll say, oh, well, you know, it's just MVPs. Just like, think about it. Joel Embiid won MVP this year and didn't even get to Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're talking about that.
Yeah.
So the Joker winning 2, could have won 3 in a row. Now we need you to finish it off so people can kind of not say so much about this whole double MVP. He just won MVPs. That's it. You know, lead his team more.
I feel like that's fair. I don't strongly disagree with you, but I'm leaning towards Jimmy because I also can't ignore the fact that I feel like Jokic might have a lot longer of a runway to get back to a championship. I know getting to championships is not easy, and winning them is even harder.
At all.
But Jokic also does have that other hardware. And no matter how this finals goes, I think we will go into next season all agreeing that Jokic is the best player in the league right now, just based off of the regular season, how things look throughout the playoffs, and what the dominance that he has shown. He's already a back-to-back league MVP. So I think it would go much further for Jimmy's resume, a ring, based on the fact that he doesn't have that other kind of hardware if he won a ring. But Shady, what do you think?
I disagree with you. I'm going to go with Joker. And you talk about legacy. When I think about legacy, this for a second, we all talked about how, oh, Jokic, there's no way he can win 3 back-to-back MVPs. And the reason why is because he had no success in the playoffs. So now there's this Joker. Anyway, now this guy is going into the finals and potentially winning. Think about the narrative. Think about his resume.
Yeah.
2-time MVP, right? Then he gets a championship. Now he's really looked at as the best player in the NBA. Even though his numbers said it, we still didn't want to give him that pass like who he did best.
Sure.
He ain't did nothing in the playoffs. He's a regular season guy. He stat pads. That was the thing. He stat pads. Now you put all them stats with a championship. It goes hand in hand. So I think for the legacy part, I got to go with the Joker.
I was smiling off the top because you got on me because I wanted to change the question or mess with the question in our pre-show meeting. And then what did you do? You changed it right off the bat.
There's a lot of snitching and hating going on.
I'm just saying.
I got no part. Well, a little bit of hating later on, but not right now.
Not right now.
So look, if this was it, like for both of them, then I could make the case that it would mean more for Jimmy Butler. But with the idea that Jokic is going to win one eventually. Right, if it was just this one. But to Shady's point, to Kat's point, I have to say that it would mean more to Jokic because it validates those MVPs. Right. We look at Kevin Garnett, for example, having won an MVP and won a championship, not necessarily at the same time or the same year. Different than we look at a Charles Barkley,
right,
who was a league MVP.
Good point.
Right? Kevin Durant wasn't really validated until he won the rings, even though he'd already won an MVP. So I think it just puts Jokic in a different category, in that special category of guys. Dirk Nowitzki won an MVP, but we looked at him different once he got that ring.
Yeah,
I think
point.
that's where it is. With Jimmy, even if he won it, he's still in that Chauncey Billups category. Like, I don't think we look at him different as a player. We don't elevate him in terms of his individual ability. We just look at him as he's a champion.
It's the MVPs. I feel like it's the MVPs that separates them, right?
I don't know. I feel like I have to push back on that just because of how this postseason has gone. Because we are really giving Jimmy the credit for where the Heat are right now.
Yes.
So even though he doesn't have those regular season accolades at the level of an MVP, the way that this postseason has gone, if they win a championship, we will assume that it will be on the back of Jimmy Butler and Jimmy Butler's play.
Yeah.
So we will look at him as an individual and this ring as a ring that Jimmy Butler won.
For sure. And we will think of him as a champion. But will you think of him any differently as a player in terms of what his individual capability is, his greatness is as an individual player? Like, oh, he showed me skills that I didn't know he had before, as opposed to he showed me that he could execute on a championship level with those same skills.
Rick makes a point. Think about this. You think about Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas. Joe won it first.
Yeah.
Right? So we didn't have media as much like that back then. But I'm pretty sure it was like, I got to win one. What if Joe win again? I got to win mine. How about this one? Steph Curry. Iguodala won.
Oh, right.
Right? So you got to think about that. Steph was MVP. It's like, but he didn't,
Finals MVP.
Finals MVP.
Finals MVP, I don't know. Can he win this? Can we?
Well, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. If he won a championship, the Heat win the championship, and Jimmy Butler wins Finals MVP, which is how we would imagine this happening.
It would go.
Then I do think it would go further for Jimmy as his whole career resume. Like that, you won't be able to take this run, particularly as them being an 8 seed who had to win a play-in game to get into the playoffs and go through this whole space. Whereas we know that Jokic is an incredible individual player. What we don't know if Jokic is capable of winning a championship and validating all those individual accomplishments with a team accomplishment of winning a championship. And we know that Jokic hasn't gone to the finals without having a strong player next to him. Don't relax. I'm not saying anything bad about Jokic. It's a team game. Everyone needs those players around them.
Right.
That's all I'm saying, where I feel like it would go further for Jimmy in validating and how we look at his entire career.
Yeah, but that, again, that's why I make the comparison to Chauncey Billups. Because Chauncey was the finals MVP of that team. And it did elevate him to a certain extent, right? And very much like Jimmy, bounced around some before he found his spot with Detroit, where he became that team leader and he was in an organization that could make the most out of what he is. Again, it kind of goes to the individual excellence. I'm not going to think of Jimmy all that different. The championship almost validates what I already think about Jimmy Butler, as opposed to Jokic crowning that MVP excellence with being able to lead a team to win it all, puts him in a different category for me.
I will say, I think after this year, though, there's not going to be a whole lot of pushback on the next time that Jokic has an MVP season.
I would agree with that.
Either.
Yeah.
So that said, what team has had a more impressive finals run, the Heat or the Nuggets?
Impressive, I have to say, the Heat. I mean, come on. They're the first team that ever was last in scoring during the regular season to get to the finals. They had to get there through the play-in game. They knocked off both the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference.
That's big right there.
Huge.
I mean, they're the first team since 1959 that gave up more points during the regular season than they scored that got to the finals. And that in 1959, I don't even know what that team was. That was the only other team that's ever done it. So just statistically, that they are where they are just seems miraculous. Now, if you want to say surprising, I could make a case for that, but I'll save that.
You're not going to change the question. Shady, who's had the more impressive run?
I'm going with the Heat. I mean, just think about this for a second. Like they go through the playoff, the play-in, even get into the playoffs. They get there, then they're matched against the number 1 seed. Now they're the 8th seed against the number 1 seed. And they beat them, right? They beat them handily, smack, 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 smack. Then they play the Knicks, who everybody felt like, oh, man, maybe the Knicks is their year. Some new additions. They beat up on them. Then they come to the Celtics, the team from the East that's always favored. And they smack up on them. So it's got to be the Heat, man. That's the storyline. You talk about all these undrafted players, right? That during the regular season, nobody never talked about them, spoke of them. I'm sure, I know we was on this show. I'm sure, watch TV, I didn't see nothing about them. They playing great minutes, balling. And now they're in the finals. So I just think that whole storyline is tremendous. And I think a lot of that credit goes to Jimmy Butler, what he's doing in Miami. You talked about, Spokes and how and things he's been doing as a coach. And then Pat Riley and that whole organization. Every year they're in the talks of either Eastern Finals or now they're in the finals. So I just love what they're doing down there in Miami.
I mean, I think they're both great. Obviously, I think that the Heat are more impressive, but I can sprinkle a little bit on the Nuggets. The Nuggets have had some disappointing postseasons leading up into this year. And going into the postseason, I was not sure how confident I was in them putting all this together.
Sure.
We hadn't seen Jamal Murray play at the highest level for quite some time. So how is he going to show up? We know Jokic is great, but him being great has not resulted in them being in the finals for the past couple years. So, you can argue they went through the Lakers. They swept the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. A sweep is hard to do, especially when LeBron James and Anthony Davis are on the other side of it. You go through Kevin Durant. I have some questions about that whole chemistry. They didn't play a lot together, but they were winning games. Yeah. So I do think you can sprinkle a little love on the Nuggets. I'll do that as the resident Heat fan. But Kat, who has had the more impressive run?
I would think the Heat because first of all you have like Shady said, you have the play-in. Then you have one of the best defensive teams in the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
Then you have a Tom Thibodeau defense,
Defensive
and
team,
that was
yeah.
my coach in 04 with the Rockets.
Yep.
Then you have the Celtics, whose defense is pretty good as well. Yeah, they won a little different from last year, defense,
Yeah,
but they're
capable.
still a very, very defensive-minded team. So when you see that, and then you see the 7 undrafted and Jimmy and listen, Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley, I bow down. They are the oracles of the NBA to me. And Shady, as you know, it's hard to win. It's hard to not only win, but get guys to buy into a system. And the way they've done that to me is the most impressive.
See, look, Nuggets fans, I don't want to hear it. I was being completely unbiased. Some love, right? Even though we got
They've been giving you a hard time.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.